heathens. Got will, got fight, got pride, got reason. If they wanna go eat, then you know I'm gon' feed them. If you're coming for me, hope you're ready for a demon. I got eyes in the back of my head, I'm seeing. Take me for granted and you know I'm leaving. I'ma take what's mine with the webs I'm weaving. I could take this crowd from seeing to believing. Got a taste for blood and my tongue keeps bleeding. From the words I spit, so sharp, so freezing, so cold. Behold, frostbite they feeling. I could tear you apart or I could go heal them. Don't believe in fate, don't believe in ceilings. I just need a taste and my mind starts feeling. I don't pace myself, I grind on kneeling. Got lust for change, I just love the feeling. I ain't gonna give up. Got too little time, I'ma live up. Head down, push forward through the tough times. Cause anything worth doing is a tough climb. I ain't gonna give up. Got too little time, I'ma live up. Head down, push forward through the tough times. Cause anything worth doing is a tough climb. Cause I'ma live life for the fight, yeah, I'm here to get it. I got drive, got sight, always have a vision. I go by at night, I be in my feelings. I'ma be fine, need time, and I'll soon be winning. I live life for the fight, yeah, I'm here to get it. I got drive, got sight, always have a vision. I go by at night, I be in my feelings. I'ma be fine, need time, and I'll soon be winning. I can feel the blood creeping up from the heathens. Got will, got fight, got pride, got reason. If they wanna go eat, then you know I'm gon' feed them. If you're coming for me, hope you're ready for a demon. I can feel the blood creeping up from the heathens. Got will, got fight, got pride, got reason. If they wanna go eat, then you know I'm gon' feed them. If you're coming for me, hope you're ready for a demon.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to the future 2026. Happy New Year. I hope everybody's doing well. We took our 2-week hiatus for Christmas and New Year, and now we are back. And we thank you guys for joining us once again for the next hour or 2 hours, could be 5 hours of paranormal discussion in and around the field, and a very, very special guest that's joining us tonight. That was handled and orchestrated by the great genius mind of Ken DaCosta.
That's what I'm saying.
But it brings a lot of good history. What we're going to be talking about tonight, and nobody better to discuss this with us, Ken. And if you'd like to do the intro, oh, by the way, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button. You see, it's just like I hate doing it because everybody on YouTube does the subscribe, hit the like button, hit the reminder bell, hit the notification bell, all that stuff. You guys should automatically know it by this
The
point.
reason for it, though, you got to do it.
So, okay, please hit the subscribe button. Do we have a little thing for that, Ken, for on screen?
Possibly.
Yeah, we'll hit the subscribe button. There we go. Like and subscribe and reminder bell. We're high tech here, guys. In 2026, it's the future. Ken, let's not wait any further. Let's bring our very, very special guest on tonight.
Absolutely. All right. This gentleman, Adam Shefts, is known as the Victorian Historian, and his journey to his passion is interesting. So tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about ghost hunting. For those of you who think that it was invented in the year 2000 with cable TV and YouTube, you could not be more wrong. And to prove it, we have a very special guest tonight, and we're going to delve into Victorian attitudes, practices, paranormal investigation, and everything culturally that kind of gets lost in the shuffle that we find fascinating. So without further ado, let's bring in our guest, Adam Shefts, tonight.
Hey, everyone.
Hello, Adam.
This
Hey,
guy
George,
is an
hey, Ken.
actor. He looks just like I think a Bronx Tale, but no, he looks like an actor to me.
No, it's just, he's like
Well, I told George earlier, I'm on camera now, so this is my 15 minutes of fame.
I thought maybe we caught you in the middle of like an embalming thing or something. Just don't let us interrupt. And matter of fact, this will be the most viewed show like ever. We can get to that. But we have people in chat. Oh my goodness. They started.
Hey, everyone in chat.
and they are absolutely raving. You're going to love Adam. You're going to love him, and there's no doubt that you will once we start getting into the topic. But
Hello, everyone. I see your messages, comments coming up. So, hello, everyone.
a lot of fans out there, Adam. Welcome, Adam. Hello. Oh, it's just Celine. That's okay.
Everybody likes a TV star.
Yeah.
Anyway, Ken, I'll turn it over to you, sir. Go ahead.
Well, thank you very much, George. So again, Adam, welcome. It's been a journey to kind of get you here, but it's good. Here you are. Awesome.
Made it.
Let's start from scratch here for people who are meeting you for the first time. Might not know you yet. How did you end up becoming the Victorian historian, and what exactly drew you to that particular era?
Well, I think I would need to start back before I created a Victorian Historian program and started writing books. But my interest in the paranormal begins back in, I don't know, was it 2006? Whenever Ghost Hunters started coming on TV, I
Yeah.
think that's when it caught a lot of people's attention. It caught my attention. I don't have any interesting experience with the paranormal growing up. They got me into the paranormal. I just thought it was interesting to watch these paranormal investigations. I really loved history at the time. I still do. And I enjoy the history portion of the show, I think, more than the actual investigation portion of it. But it got me interested to the point that I was living in Connecticut at the time. I ended up joining up with a Connecticut team that was already established. And I was with them for a couple of years, and we investigated, you know, many different locations, and I really enjoyed it. Then that team ended up folding, and I went ahead and started my own team, and I did that for 9 years. We worked with historical societies all over Connecticut. We worked with some in New York, and what we did is after we conducted an investigation, we would conduct public presentations of our findings, if there were any. And then the money brought in from ticket sales would go right back to the Historical Society to help refurbish their structures that needed some um, facelifting, shall we say, or some programs, Historical Society programs. Um, I did that until 2017 when I ended up deciding to move to Gettysburg. And my friends and I, we would visit Gettysburg once a year. It was our annual vacation spot. And then one by one, my friends started getting married and having families of their own. And that eventually left me by myself. And I was like, well, even if they can't travel anymore the way they used to, I still want to go to Gettysburg. So I was faced with a decision to either visit once a year as I had been doing, or just get a job transfer or move. And I did that. I got a job transfer and I moved a month later and ended up in Gettysburg. Now I live just 20 minutes outside of Gettysburg, but I'm there
Mhm.
all the time. When I moved to Gettysburg, I realized how many different teams there were, how many different paranormal investigation teams there were, and I didn't know which one to join up with. I was still interested in investigating. I wasn't even sure if I should start my own team up again. I decided, you know what? I'm going to take a different avenue. My main love is history. Yes, I love the paranormal, but my main love is history. And I was at the Tilly Pierce House in Gettysburg for I think it was Remembrance Day weekend. I happened to stop in there. I was trying to introduce myself and meet new people. I was new in town. I didn't know anybody, and I overheard some of the women during a tea party at the Tilly Pierce House saying how their husbands are partaking in reenactments, but there's nothing for them to do. There's no programs for them to attend, and that got me thinking. Well, you know what? I mean, I really want to do something with history here. I didn't know what, but I want to do something with history. Obviously, people are talking about wanting a program, so I'm going to come up with a program. Came up with an hour-long program on just weird, bizarre history from America's 19th and early 20th century, and that's when I named the program the Victorian Historian. I'm like, you know what? I'll just use that as a stage name. It's good enough for that. So since 2018, 2019, I've just been going as the Victorian historian when I do these programs and when I do book signings, and that's basically how I got started with that.
Yeah. Now, what is it about the Victorian era before we dive into specific topics? What is it about the Victorian era that either still creeps people out or fascinates them? I mean, were they more open to these type of things, or maybe a little embarrassed to talk about it? So during that era, what were the attitudes basically toward the afterlife, the paranormal, the idea of ghosts and specters being present?
Yeah. Well, it starts with the Fox sisters, who I'm sure many people have heard of. I do have a picture of them. Maybe you have one, but I do have a picture I can
Sure.
share and hold up to the screen. The Fox sisters were three sisters from Rochester, New York, and here they are. If you can see
There you
them, I'm
go.
trying to hold.
There's
Sorry,
Kate.
there we go. Yep. And so we have Maggie, Kate, and Leah.
Yep.
Leah was the eldest sister. The Fox sisters started by basically playing tricks in their house. They would roll an apple across the floor in their bedroom, and their mother would come in and wonder what the racket was. Why are all these apples being rolled across the floor? And the sisters were like, "Wasn't me. We don't know how the apple got across the floor." They started knocking, making knocking sounds in their bedroom. Again, their mother would come in and want to know what the sounds were. Again, the sisters were like, "Wasn't me." The sisters ended up perfecting this form of spiritualism, this entertainment, and took it on the road. They became they started doing seances. Yep, there you go. They started doing seances in private homes, and that eventually spread out into public theaters in New York and even abroad. They appeared in Europe, in some major theaters in Europe. They were like the biggest celebrities at the time, some of the biggest celebrities during the 1850s. Um, but Leah was a little selfish. She was the eldest sister, and she felt that because she's the oldest, she should have um, control of all the monetary gains that the sisters had made. She would share money with the sisters, but she would, of course, keep most of the profits for herself. The
Hmm.
sisters argued about this at least two times. Well, yeah, two times they actually did argue about this to the point of almost some of them quitting at times. In I believe 1860, or I'm sorry, the 18. Actually, they were prominent through the 1860s. It was through 1888. They did a public performance in 1888, and again, Leah took it upon herself to keep all the funds from these ticket sales. And the sisters were like, "That's it. We've had enough. We're not dealing with this again. We are going to out Leah as a liar." Because what was happening is, even though the sisters had a reputation of being authentic spiritualists, what they were doing is when they were making knocking sounds and tapping sounds during these public seances, which amazed audiences, they were actually cracking their toe knuckles, and they perfected it. They could crack their toe knuckles whenever they wanted, and because they were wearing shoes, the audience couldn't see their toes moving. So they were fed up with Leah wanting to keep all the funds for herself. One of the sisters came out publicly on stage during that show in 1888 and said, "We have an announcement to make. We are not the spiritualists you think we are." Now, in outing Leah, they ended up shooting themselves in the foot because now their careers are destroyed,
Right.
having come out as these frauds. But what happened in the meantime is they got the ball rolling in the spiritualist movement. Um, Even though their careers were destroyed, they came out publicly that they were not authentic spiritualists, that they were using their toe knuckles to create these spirit rappings, as they called it. They really did get the ball rolling with spiritualism. And before the Civil War, there was something called the Good Death, and that was being surrounded by your family at home and passing away in bed, surrounded by your loved ones. They When the Civil War happened, that went out the window. You had soldiers, young men, dropping to their deaths right on the ground where they were shot. The family had no time to say goodbye. There was no good death. There was no finalization. There was no closure. And following the Civil War, people wanted to know that their loved ones who had passed away, who were killed on the battlefields, were okay in the afterlife. So these mediums were hired mediumship started really coming in its own age at the time. After the Civil War, people in their homes would hire mediums to come over and communicate with their loved ones. And some of the mediums were satisfactory to the families, gave them the closure that they needed, but it also brought in a lot of people who were not mediums who were not very honest and really kind of told the family what they wanted to hear, just to gain financial funds,
Right. Right.
financial profits. Um, and this really carried on into the 1870s. I mean, the spiritual movement really boomed in the 1870s, so much so that spiritualism became an unofficial religion. You could ask someone what their religion is in the 1870s, and they would say that they are a spiritualist. It was an unofficial religion at the time. Yeah, table tipping, as you see right here, that started in the 1860s, as a way of communicating with deceased loved ones, that really, I mean, and it really carried into the 1880s, 1890s. There was a little bit of a lag, I think, into the 1930s through 50s, and then it sort of came back into prominence, and especially in the early 2000s when you had all these paranormal TV shows
Right.
starting
Right. Right.
starting to air.
So let me ask you. Let me ask you. Do beliefs about hauntings in the Victorian age were they class dependent? In other words, wealthy versus working class Victorians. Did one or the other tend to gravitate a little bit more to this? Because we read stories how the elites would have mediums in their home and they'd have exhibitions and so forth. So, um, what was the class dynamic in terms of beliefs and spiritualism and so forth?
It was actually across the board. So I wrote a series of books, which I'll talk about a little bit later. History's Haunted Headlines, which are personal accounts that appeared in 19th century newspapers. They're ghost stories which have been lost to time until I'm trying to bring them out into, share them with a new generation of paranormal enthusiasts. But in my research, I found that there was, I mean, it spanned all classes. There are stories and accounts of people who are barely making it, just scratching by, who have had paranormal experiences, and then there's millionaires, politicians that have had experiences that shared it with reporters. Basically, in the 19th century, um, if you had a paranormal experience, you thought you did, you thought you saw something, you thought you heard something, um, something touched you, something whispered in your ear, you would go find a reporter from any newspaper across the country, and you would tell the reporter of what you experienced. And those reports would end up in newspapers nationwide, and that's how all these stories came about in 19th century. But it spans all classes. I mean, there's
Yeah.
no you know more
Was
one than another.
was spiritualism at that point one of these things that filled a gap when people started questioning the religion that they were raised in, born in? Like, you see a lot of that even today. I've always thought that religion, the difference is religion, you're following a dogma and a path, whereas being spiritual, you are seeking your own path. So when people turned to spiritualism, was that their way of saying, whether it was Christianity, Protestantism, Anglican, it wasn't speaking to them, so they turned to something else?
That I haven't uncovered that in my research. I don't know the answer to that. I'm sorry.
Mm.
I don't know, because in my research there are Catholics, there are Christians, there are people of all different denominations and faiths that, um, some of them poo-pooed the spiritualism, and some of them openly accepted it. I don't know if I don't know the answer to that. I apologize.
No, no,
Um,
it's a very individual thing because sometimes sects forms, sects for those. Sorry for my Rhode Island accent, but sects would form off various religions as people decided it's not really speaking to them. So I've always been of the mind that perhaps, spiritualism was one of those things for people, which They believed that humans could communicate with the dead, and likewise believed that the dead were just, no pun intended, dying to talk to humans at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's there is so much. I mean, there's so much to uncover, and so much to
Yeah.
really dive into and learn about in this field. And people are still, some people struggle with that today. Some people, no matter what your religion, your religious beliefs are, they still struggle with that. I know people personally who don't know if it's okay to believe in spirits, or be involved in spiritualism, even just as much as hearing an EVP. They think that will
Right.
bring something negative into their life.
Right.
So there is still a lot of confusion over that. But
It's
yeah,
a variation, I think, Adam, on, technology comes into all our lives. So obviously in paranormal research, why not? Why doesn't that, of course, become a part of what we do? So it's a variation of the same theme where we're talking about knocks and rapping. Now we're talking about things that go ping and light up and
Mhm.
recorders. It's all very much the same thing. The delivery system is just a little bit different though.
Yeah, yeah, and who knows what it'll be like 100 years from now? Who knows if we'll ever fully understand
Right.
everything about the paranormal? It's just the fascinating thing is we can read history, we can take history courses, but there's no other avenue the paranormal directly communicate with those who lived in the past.
Right.
And I mean, I find that fascinating.
It is. It
It's
it actually is how people's attitudes toward death and the afterlife, because that's the question that we've been asking ourselves since the dawn of time. What happens to us when we pass
Mhm.
over? Do we retain our personality and character and memories? Are we still in some form a sentient being? Are we energy? And that's okay. I don't know if we'll ever get there, but the journey's been a lot of fun. Take us,
Absolutely.
if you will, now. We were talking about mediumship and a little bit about, mediums. Take us into what a typical 19th century seance would be. And I'll repeat a couple of pictures. I'm sure everybody knows what a seance is, but
All
this
right.
this this is pretty typical of that type of thing. So
Yeah.
set the stage
So
for us.
yeah. So there were actually two different types of seances, or done two different ways in the 19th century. Some were just as you showed table, partaking in table tipping, which obviously is table shifts and moves and jumps
Mm.
to questions in which the answer is yes. Yep, there you go. The other one is more like a theater, more like a show. So a lot of seances in the 19th century they took place in private residences. It was basically an evening. It was an evening's entertainment at the time. People would hire these spiritualists to come and conduct seances. What the spiritualists would do is they would have what's called a cabinet, and it was a wooden box, and they would open the box. They would have an assistant with them. The assistant would actually place them, have them go in a box, close the door, and then the spiritualist or the medium was supposed to go into a trance, and then spirits were supposed to come out from behind a curtain and talk to people in the audience. Um, the assistant would be behind the curtain and just kind of monitor what's going on in the room, make sure everyone is behaving correctly. Um, there were some incidents, and I have them written in my book, where fights occurred, like physical altercations occurred, because a spirit came out and approached an individual sitting in the room and saying, "I am your cousin who passed away 2 years ago," and the person who was approached would say, "No, you're not my cousin," and then the spirit or the person portraying the spirit would try to convince them that they were, and there were a few different physical altercations that came about. But basically, what would happen is a spirit would come forth from behind the curtain, whether it was for anyone to believe if it was a actual spirit or someone dressed in spiritual attire.
Mhm.
But that person would come out and look across the audience, and start pointing people out. I have a message for you from your sister who passed away. Somehow, these people knew things about audience members. Um, there were a lot of, I mean, which leads to believe that
Mhm.
that this was, um, kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Um, it was information was known about people in the audience beforehand. That's how these theater sort of entertainments worked. Many people did believe that a spirit who came out from behind the curtain really was who they said, and they would
Mm.
cry or they would pass out because they could believe that this person came out and approached them. But many times it was found out that these people were, frauds that were coming out from
Right.
behind the curtain. But
Well, it was always done in a dark room. That was the
it was always
thing,
done
and
in a dark room. Yep.
we've all
And
heard about trumpets flying through the
yeah,
air,
yeah.
you know.
But in the other sense, with table tipping, obviously there was no physical manipulation. It was all movements of objects. It was spirit wrapping. So that you can lean a little more toward it being authentic spirit
Mhm.
activity rather than a medium going into a trance in basically a wooden box and then somebody stepping out from behind a curtain. So those are the two different ways that seances were conducted, but they all pretty much began the same way, which is the lights being turned down or
Right, sure.
eliminated completely, and then audiences would go into song many times. They would sing some religious hymns, and that was supposed to um, bring the energy into the room
Mhm.
and start the whole process.
Are
But
you
yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm not sorry.
No, no, trying to squeeze my questions in here. It's okay. We'll just talk over each other. It's fine. Are you surprised in any way that this still is done on such a widespread manner today? Because there's still seances, there's still table tipping. These things,
Mhm.
have been around with us for centuries now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Does it surprise you at all, or is it just kind of like, well, um, just par for the course? People are still
Yeah.
trying things.
It doesn't surprise me. It is all part of the course, as you said.
Mhm.
The equipment is getting a little better that we're using now.
Yeah.
We can do more than table tip. I mean, table tipping still is around today, but now
Right.
there's so many instruments that we can use. Uh, and who knows what the instruments would be like, again, in the future. I mean, I don't know if we'll ever fully understand everything about the paranormal or have all the answers. But it is interesting that, we do seem to be getting a little bit closer, making a little bit of headway, and it's interesting to see. Even
Mhm.
though I'm not involved in paranormal investigating, I'm not involved in it anymore. My interest has led me to the research side of it and,
Right.
writing books about it. But it is interesting to kind of follow the field and see what's being used these days. I mean,
Yeah.
the equipment I used when I investigated is so archaic by today's standards. It was literally some digital audio recorders and digital cameras. And that is it. Maybe an EMF meter, but
You know,
it was
I'm
so archaic.
I am a great believer because I have used all of it, and then eventually evolved to the point where I believe less is more, and you don't really need to be encumbered or overburdened by the latest gadget and things like that, because investigation always comes down to two basic things: who are you and what do you want? At the end of the day, those are the thing. Now, how you get there, of course, how you communicate is open for interpretation, and there's a lot of ways to do it. But sometimes I think we're overburdened by that. So I think you were in the right realm there. A recorder, a camera, a video recorder, you know. But this is at the time. It's amazing to me how people will still go back to the future because you still read about people putting powder down on the floor to kind of
Mhm.
capture footsteps, which is something that harks back to the Victorian era, where they were like, that was kind of archaic the way, but they did what they needed to do. Um, so let's talk about mediums before we move on to something else. At what point did organizations like the Society for Psychical
Mhm.
Research in England come into play, where they started out at first trying to expose mediums or
Mhm.
testing them, to be generous, to test their claims? Was it right about the time that these things really started to take off, especially in England, Europe?
Yeah. Um, Things that happened in England kind of carried over into the United States.
Right.
We got lot of our customs from England. Those organizations, both abroad and here in the
Hmm.
United States, started in the 1860s. So right after the Civil War, when the spiritualist boom was really just beginning, it really began blossoming in the early 1870s. That's when when spiritualist groups, or some were made of skeptics and some were made of believers that wanted proof. They were kind of on the fence. They would put out ads in newspapers asking if anyone's a haunted house or if anyone has had their own paranormal experience. And then you would write into these organizations. You would write into the newspapers. Newspapers would forward it to the organizations, and and they were able to obtain data that way.
Mm.
Some have put out ads for actually purchasing haunted locations or at least renting them for a period of time. And I do have one here. So I mean, this is a good example. This is from 18. This is from actually from 1857, and this is from volume one of my book, History's Haunted Headlines. But I do have. I know it's a little tough to see, but it's an ad placed in the New York Times on March 10th, 1857. And what it
Oh.
says is wanted by a skeptical family, a house said to be haunted, which may be had at a low rent, either in town or country, if within reasonable distance of this city. And then it gives the address of the individual that someone who might have a haunted house could write to. So so ads like that were placed in newspapers across the country, and I have other examples of it as well. But that's what they did in Europe also. People wanted, these investigators. Some of the first investigators wanted to investigate properties themselves. And
Mhm.
actually, speaking of ghost hunting, the term ghost hunting appeared in the 1860s. It's the first time it appeared, except and I used the word, the quotes, ghost hunting. That's what they
Right.
used in the papers. Wasn't ghost hunting as we know it today,
Right.
or as I prefer the term paranormal investigating, because you're not really hunting a ghost. You can't shoot a ghost, but um, but in the 1860s, there was this problem going on. I'm not sure about Europe, but I know across the United States, especially Cleveland. For some reason, Cleveland was had the issue most of all. But people were dressing up in ghostly attire. They would throw a sheet over themselves, or they would paint their face white with this luminescent paint that would glow in the dark, and they would prowl the streets at night, scaring women and children, chasing them up the streets back to their houses. Women would faint, children would scream. They wouldn't leave the house after dark. So it got to the point where bands of young men, boys and young men, would arm themselves
Mm.
with baseball bats and pistols and
Yeah.
knives.
What could
They
possibly
would,
go wrong there?
yeah, right. And they would go on the streets looking for these ghosts, literally trying to hunt them. They were ghost hunting, literally trying. They knew that this person wearing a sheet wasn't a real ghost. It was just somebody trying
Right.
to scare, people. And so they took it upon themselves to actually hunt these people down. There was one incident, I believe it was off the top of my head, in the 1850s, where this band of young men, they had heard that there was a ghost. Someone ran to them breathless, And I believe, if I remember the story correctly, one shoe off their foot. That's how fast they were running. And they ran up to this band of these young men who they know were hunting ghosts, and said that there is a ghost in someone's backyard. And the person gave them the address. And so these group of men armed with knives and clubs and baseball bats and pistols went over to this property, and they looked over the fence, and they saw a ghost flapping in the wind. Most of the group fled in terror right at that moment, except for one individual who he had a knife on him. He was brave enough to hop the fence, and he took his knife and he just plowed into that ghost and stabbed it. The ghost fell to the ground. He fell down with the ghost and continued stabbing it. There was no resistance by this spirit. He got up and he realized what he did is he stabbed some lady's nightgown that was hung on a clothesline flapping in the wind. So, and I don't know, for some reason Cleveland had this happen a couple times, but this also happened in the Northeast, and there were ghost hunting groups out to put a stop to these pranksters, basically,
Well, I
and
think
that's
in England, somebody was convicted of murder for exactly the same thing. Is it the Greenbrier ghost? No, God, I don't think so. The Hammersmith ghost,
I'm
where
not familiar with those.
yeah, in England, everybody was reporting being attacked by a ghost. And then at one point, a young man following along literally shot someone that he thought was a ghost and killed him and was tried for murder. I think eventually they commuted the sentence, but there was an awful lot of scary stuff going on because of people's attitudes. What I found interesting in the ads that you showed
Mm,
were people asking for, let's call them investigators, the prototypes, to come in and disprove something
mhm,
rather than today's attitudes where they want you to come in and catch something,
mhm,
to prove they're not crazy. And I found that an interesting dichotomy there back then, where people were like, we think we're going on, please come and put our minds at ease. That's kind of laudable to me. That's
mhm.
that's a pretty good idea.
Yeah, yeah. And speaking, you had mentioned someone shooting and getting in trouble for shooting at a ghost. It is amazing in my research, especially during the 1860s, how many police officers fired at what they thought was a ghost, just carelessly taking out the revolver and just firing. They don't know if it's a ghost, if it's a real ghost, they don't know what might be behind it. If there's a person behind it that might get shot as a bullet passes through it. They don't know if it's a prankster. They don't know. They were scared. People did not understand spiritualism, and of course, what isn't understood is scary. So it is amazing how many police officers, out of fear, just took out the revolver and fired so carelessly.
Yeah,
Um,
and
I,
for those of you out there who are thinking of starting a paranormal group, the Paranormal Vigilantes would probably be a pretty cool name for it. You can thank us later.
yeah, yeah, but throughout the 19th century, I mean, it was still, even though there was a big spiritualist movement, a big spiritualist boom in the 1880s, 1890s, people were becoming less afraid of spirits, I want to say.
Hmm.
But I mean, still afraid enough that there's always that off chance someone's going to pull out a weapon and just attack.
To show you a little bit, I'm going to put this picture up. These are the founders of the Society for Psychical Research in London. And some of the names down the bottom, I apologize, they're in black, but there's a couple of them. William James is very well known. William Crooks is very well known. But these were academics, these were scientists, these were men of letters. One face that's not shown there is Arthur Conan Doyle, the creator of Sherlock Holmes. So they took what they were doing at that point very seriously. And for these men of science and literature and the backgrounds that they had to get involved with it, I think that gives you a little idea of how big this was and how widespread it was.
Absolutely, absolutely. And even with and people started. I mean, I know today with paranormal investigating, people try to communicate with prominent figures in history, and that was no different back then. For instance, John Wilkes Booth, following his assassination of President Lincoln, there was a in 1866 there was a séance that took place in Chicago at a private residence, and I did include in my book here the entire séance. The questions and everything. But people tried to communicate with John Wilkes Booth. I do have a little bit of it here. I think part of it is pretty interesting because the questions that were asked, if I can find it, um, yes. So John Wilkes Booth came through. He told how he had planned to shoot Lincoln. Now, as he came through this this in the séance, he said that he stood in front of Lincoln. He entered the box. He stood in front of Lincoln,
Hmm.
but as he fired his pistol, Lincoln turned his head, and that's why he got shot in the back of the head. So, believe it as you will. I know all the artist depictions show
Right.
Booth standing behind Lincoln, and Booth coming through in the séance. Again, take it with a grain of salt. He said that he stood in front of Lincoln, and then Lincoln turned his head as he fired the revolver. That's how he got shot in the back. But as this group of people during this private séance were communicating with John Wilkes Booth, um, there is a section here. Let's see, where is it? Oh, okay. So somebody asked John, "Are you in heaven?" John replies, "No," with a in quotations given savagely. That's how it's said in the
Okay.
newspaper. The person asked, "Are you in the other place?" And Wilkes Booth says, "Yes." Is there a devil down there? Wilkes Booth says, "Yes." Does he treat you rough? Wilkes Booth says, "Yes." And then it says, and the table kept up for some minutes a continual jigger, as if the very thought of his treatment put John in a rage. Um, then someone asked, "Do you think you deserve it?" And then, very emphatically, John says, "No."
Hmm. So
So,
the catalyst or the idealism that drove him to assassinate the president still resounded loudly.
oh, absolutely. And he ended the seance saying that the South shall rise again. And then the seance concluded after that.
Okay. Now, around about that time, we would be remiss if we didn't get into the next step. That I think, unless, I mean, what we've heard is it originated in Boston, maybe you have more insight into that, was the idea of spirit photography,
Mhm.
which then became, I don't know, you'd have to give me a timeline on that. If it kind of coincided with spiritualism, or was it an offshoot, or was it sort of the next evolution of
No, it
this?
coincided with it. Yeah. So when spiritualism started becoming prominent in the 1860s, William Mumler, I'm sure you're familiar with that name. He kind of was, I guess you could call him the father of spiritualist or spirit photography.
Mhm.
Um, and um, he would have people sit for a picture, and then he would have a second picture already developed, and he would basically overlap that picture over the first one.
Oh, he was
Um,
laying
and
laying plates on top.
yes, yes. And some people, when they saw that picture of themselves with a spirit behind them, yeah, there you go. They actually recognized it as their deceased loved one, even if it was just some random person who happened to be sitting for a photograph that Mumler had kept that
Mhm.
negative of, to use to overlap over this new photo. And then some people said, "I don't know who that person is behind me. That's not, my father, my brother." So William Mumler ended up being found to be a fraud. Unfortunately, all of his notes, all of his information that he kept while he was perfecting this art of spirit photography,
Mhm.
he destroyed it before he passed away. So
Oh.
we have no. documentation of his research into this.
I think the other thing that you have to realize or understand back then, how long it would take you to sit for a photo,
Well,
because
that's
you're not talking about quick shutter speeds or anything there.
no, not at that time. But by the 1850s, a photograph could be taken within 10 seconds. So there's this belief that the reason people didn't smile in early photos is because it took so long for a photo to be taken. They also believed because there was lack of dental hygiene at the time that people didn't have the greatest teeth and didn't want them seen in photographs. But there's no documentation to back that second theory up. And again, by the 1850s, a photo could be taken within 10 seconds. So that theory kind of goes out the window a bit. The reason why people didn't smile in the early photos is prior to photographic portraits, when portraits were painted, most people painted in these portraits were either fools or drunks.
Mm,
And so people, when they wanted a photograph taken, if they had the money for it, they can maybe only afford one in a lifetime. They didn't want that photo representing them as a fool or a drunk, so they remained stone faced. In fact, Mark Twain, who's known for never smiling in photos, once stated, "A photograph is the most important document, and there is nothing more damning to go down to posterity than a silly, foolish smile caught and fixed forever."
yeah.
So, as reasons of posterity, people likely didn't smile for these old photos, and that's why they always look so stern. And they didn't really
Yeah.
start smiling until about the 1920s, I would say, when personal cameras became more affordable.
Yeah. I've always thought it was either they had very bad teeth or their patience was at an end because they'd been sitting there for an hour. The most famous spirit photograph of all time, of course, is with Mary Todd Lincoln. And I'm going to put that up here right now, and I'm sure that you've got the background to this. But I mean, as you can see it, there's Abe over her shoulder and a hand on her shoulder. What can you tell us about the Lincoln family and spiritualism, Adam?
So Mary Todd was very big into spiritualism. She would hold seances uh, at a fairly decent rate. Um, there's even there's it's uncertain if President Lincoln. I'm sorry, there's a ambulance going by or a fire truck. So, but um, President Lincoln himself was said to have attended at least one or two of her seances. Um, I don't know if he necessarily believed in what was going on, but she certainly was a big believer.
Right.
I've heard mixed reactions. I've heard mixed information that yes, he did believe in spiritualism, and then I've heard no, he didn't believe it, but he just wanted to appease her and
Hmm.
sit in to make her happy, to support her in something that she enjoyed doing. But she was very very big into spiritualism, especially after their son died.
Right. Yeah.
She started holding seances more often to try and communicate with him.
Yeah, it's been alleged that he used spiritualists or mediums to make important decisions um, in terms of the War of the States, but that's never really been corroborated that
Mhm.
that ever happened. Someone mentioned that you'd also see things like this, and I
I never saw that one before.
I happen to have one up there. This is called ectoplasm, ladies. And it was quite a thing where people were spitting out all sorts of gauze and everything. Very unhygienic.
Yeah, yeah. I haven't done too much research into ectoplasm. I've seen lots of photos of it coming out of people's mouths, but I haven't actually looked too much into that.
No, it seems like a little silly, um, but I think we have to understand where people were coming from back then, and people looking to grasp onto something, especially then, because there is empirical evidence that shows in times of great turmoil in this country, particularly after wars, and this goes from the Civil War through World War I, World War II, Korean conflict, Vietnam. There is a spike in the belief of people in the afterlife, and an interest in that. And it's probably because of the lives lost, where people are just looking for something a little greater than themselves, a little higher than themselves. So, of course, why not? Um, Another couple of pictures. This was, I don't know how everybody feels about this, but it was not unusual for a family to pose with the deceased. Um, and here's another photo of that. I don't know if you'd see very much of that now, but that was pretty commonplace.
It was, and actually, it is making somewhat of a comeback. I have
Yeah.
seen recent photos. I remember seeing a photo of a woman who had passed away, I don't know, within the last 10 years, and she enjoyed playing cards. So she was propped up in a chair at the kitchen table with a deck of cards in front of her. She had sunglasses on, and yeah, it's coming back a little bit. I've seen people at funerals taking pictures of individuals in their coffin. So it is sort of, it's a nod to the past. It is. What's interesting is with the postmortem photography. So if a person passed away in the 19th century, and again, it was expensive to have a photograph taken. Many people couldn't afford it. Those who could maybe only afford one in a lifetime. When a person passed away, the first thing a family did numerous times is they would contact a photographer before a doctor,
Mm-hmm.
before the body started, decomposing or getting too stiff. And the photographer would come in. Sometimes they'd be artists, and they would draw pupils on eyelids. They look very realistic. If you see a postmortem photograph and the eyes look like they're too alive,
Right.
um,
Right.
that's most likely the eye drawn onto the eyelid or painted onto the eyelid.
Right.
Some of these photographers excelled in that. Some didn't, but some did.
There was also a thing, and here's an example called mourning jewelry,
Mhm.
where a locket of hair of the deceased is incorporated into what looks like a medallion, some type of cameo that can be worn around the neck. And this is not something that's horribly unusual to this day. People carry ashes and vials. Um, any one of a number of things. Someone made a guitar out of his father's bones.
Oh wow,
Yeah,
that's interesting.
yeah, that's good. So this kind of thing, in memoriam is still around today, but it was just a little more present because I think Victorians, one way or the other, they had an intense relationship with death. And I
Mhm.
think they were trying to figure those things out. So much so that in order to kind of try to alleviate people's fears, different varieties or designs of cemeteries were made. There's a difference between, for everybody out there, between a burial ground and a cemetery, in my mind. A burial ground usually was on the property of a church, and these were parishioners and their family, and eventually they ran out of room. So, yeah, different varieties of cemeteries, but the one that comes to mind was the garden cemetery, and designed with trees and maybe flowing brooks and flowers and hedges. So people would actually go in there and have picnics or go for
Mhm.
walks or go courting or something like that. And it was all designed to try to assuage people or alleviate this fear of death. I mean, I don't know how it worked, but they designed some of the most beautiful pieces of property
Mhm.
that this country has.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, people had picnics by their loved one's grave, um, and it was a way to, if especially if they didn't have a photograph of that individual who passed away, they wanted to be near that person, and the closest, or to at least, I guess you can't see them,
Mhm.
but you could see their headstone, and be close to them that way. So yeah, people would pack up picnics and have lunch there,
Yeah,
um, and it was common. It was common.
They're very common.
Absolutely.
Now, I want to talk a little bit about because of science, medical science, and it was the great age of enlightenment, but we were still had a lot of work to do. The fear of being buried alive was very real. And a lot of times, coffins, it's funny and not funny at the same time, but they were designed to kind of alert people to the idea that, oops, I think we made a mistake.
Yeah, yeah. You had the safety coffins, which basically was a rope attached to a bell. Yeah, is that okay? Yeah. So you have this night watchman on the grounds at night of the cemetery or the graveyard. And if a person was accidentally buried, because medical knowledge wasn't great back then, if someone's breathing became so shallow, doctors might accidentally say that they had died when they're just maybe
Right.
in a coma, but they're going to come out of it at some point, and they may be buried alive. And so this rope or string, rather, would be tied around a wrist and a person's foot inside the coffin, attached to a bell above ground. And if the person happened to wake up, they would naturally start moving. The bell would ring. The night watchman would hear it and be able to get help for that person. They also had coffins with windows. The coffins would be buried pretty shallow, so that you can actually see. Into well, actually not too shallow, but the window was kind of protruded a bit up to the top of the ground, so you can actually see in. You can see the person's face, and and the night watchman could peer in every now and then and see if the person was alert or not.
That
There-
sounds like a horror movie trope.
oh, absolutely,
You see the
absolutely.
eyes darting. By the way, the bell on the coffin, fun fact, that's where the saying "Saved by the Bell" comes
Mhm.
from. For
Yeah,
if you're keeping score at home.
yeah. There was an incident. I do have an incident of being buried alive in the 19th century. So this happened. Oh, I forgot what state this happened in. I think Arkansas, possibly. But there was a businessman, James Hatcher. He was 30 years old, and he married Octavia. She was 20. They were married in 1889. They had their first child in 1890, who passed away the following year in 1891. Um, Octavia was devastated of losing her first and only child that the couple would have together. She was devastated. She became ill shortly after, became bedridden, and doctors tended to her. They didn't know what was wrong with her. They thought she was dying of a broken heart because she was getting worse every day. Her breathing was getting more shallow, and to the point where doctors could barely find a pulse anymore. And she was pronounced dead on May 2nd, 1891, and she was promptly buried. Shortly after her burial, her husband James started having nightmares that his wife Octavia was trying to scratch her way out of her coffin. It got to the point that this happened night after night. That he had her body exhumed. He couldn't take it anymore. He had the coffin exhumed. The coffin was opened, and the lining was all shredded, and there was blood streaks on the coffin lid. Octavia's nails were broken, and there was
Mhm.
a look of panic on her face. Um, uh, James was beside him, and the reason why he thought that there might be something wrong initially was I kind of skipped a part here. I'm sorry. Gotta backtrack a little bit. Is when Octavia's sh- breathing became very shallow, other people's breathing became shallow. They fell into the same kind of coma, and it was then discovered that this fly called the tsetse fly, when it bit people,
Mm.
it made them fall into a coma. And with the same symptoms Octavia had, and then he started having these dreams. I'm sorry, I missed that big step right in between, and I apologize. I kind of ruined the story, but um, but yeah. So she had been bitten by this tsetse fly, and she would have come out of the coma as everyone else had, who
Mm.
had the same symptoms, and instead she was buried alive.
Mm.
So kind of a sad situation, and I kind of yeah, sleeping sickness. I just saw that someone posted that.
Right, right.
Um, yeah, I did. But yeah, I kind of told the story a little bit out of order. I apologize, but hopefully I didn't ruin it too
All
much.
good. It's all good. Hey, we do have a question here from Dan St. Marie, of all people. Geez, question for Adam. Were not most of these seances fraudulent? I guess that's in your opinion.
Most of them were.
Yeah.
Yeah, from my research, in hundreds and hundreds of newspapers across the country, yeah, most were fraudulent.
Yeah.
Um, there are some people who attended seances and said it was the best thing they ever attended. They were fully convinced that every spirit that came out from behind the curtain was legitimate
Oh, I'm
because of the way
sure.
because of the way people reacted.
Hmm.
Again, the spirit that came out from behind the curtain would approach someone and be like, I'm your mother." They would refer to the person
Right.
by their name. How would they know their name if it wasn't their actual mother? So,
Hmm.
but a lot of them, had information beforehand, and yeah, most were fraudulent.
Right. We call them hot readings these days, where you take snippets out of the audience. You have a plant out there listening and things like that.
Mhm.
There is something in England, though, that developed called the Fraudulent Mediums Act. And I couldn't recite chapter and verse of it other than it sounds exactly what it's intended for, whatever it says, but this is how prevalent some of these things are. Now, I'm not sure if you have to label what you do for entertainment only to satisfy certain things. We don't have anything here like it in the United States. I guess it's just, fraud or however you're misrepresented. Okay, what do I want to move on to next? We got coffins. Early ghost hunting. That's a good place to go. Okay. So before EMF meters and gadgets, some of these things were pretty arcane. But
Mhm.
how did Victorians try to investigate hauntings? And I guess, Harry Price gets here's a picture of old Harry, I guess. He gets most of the the star factor in this. Basically, it all started at this place, which is the Borley Rectory in England, said to be the most haunted place in England. Well, that's up for debate, I guess. But, Harry was kind of back and forth between an exaggerator and an actual investigator. But eventually, this Cyclical Research Society decided to be more proactive rather than just sit at seances and table tipping and readings. They reported or responded to paranormal claims at locations. So, kind of, what was that like back then in terms of them going into a place? And was it like it my understanding, it wasn't necessarily like for a 5 hour period. I
Yeah,
mean,
no,
sometimes they
no.
even
Well,
would.
you'd be surprised. I mean, it could last all night. So
Yeah.
there were many incidents of reports in newspapers of these haunted locations, locations that were having some kind of spiritual manifestation occurring in them, or people being harassed by some spirit. And these people would then, they what papers would do is they would put addresses at the time. They would put an address of the house,
Right.
sometimes even an illustration of the house itself, along with a diagram of the floor and the specific room that the um, haunting was occurring in. So people would contact these individuals. They would just show up randomly at these people's homes, sometimes in the middle of the night,
Oh my.
and knock on the door and ask, "We read about your home being haunted. Can we come in and investigate?" Sometimes, many times, the homeowner would say no and shut the door in their face. There were some times when the homeowner said, "Yeah, sure, come in. Come and check it out," and the person would end up staying in the home for couple hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, trying to investigate. Um, the way they investigated was simply asking for knocking sounds. If there's a presence here, can you knock? If you know, if it's no response to a question, knock once. If it's a yes, knock twice. Um, putting an item on a chair or on the floor and asking the item to be moved. Of course, table tipping was a part of that as well.
Right.
Um, and so yeah. There, I mean, there were no instruments to use at the time, and so the best instrument to use was auditory. Um,
No, hope we didn't lose you there. All right, maybe we maybe we'll reboot. Hi, George.
Maybe we will. There he is. He's back in now.
Adam's coming back. There he
oh
is.
wait, all right, let me hit reload.
You're good. We hear you
Am I
now.
back?
Yeah, we were down. We were down,
Oh, and we lost him again. I
and
guess
he's
he
on.
hit reload.
It's all right.
Fascinating individual. I don't know if you saw there that Ken also I put it in the star. Cody and Satori said that they have a
Yeah.
safety bell in the museum.
Yep. I've seen it.
Quite interesting.
I guess it never rang.
There we go. Adam's back.
All right, Adam's back. There you go. We knew he was coming back. So, Adam, we were just talking about you were into the idea of these people going into homes and things like that, and the lack um, of certain technologies that they may have had at the beginning. Oh, can't hear you. That microphone going. Nope. We'll go out and come back in again. Hi, George. Good to see you again. Long time no see.
The spirits are jumping in and interfering with the interview.
That's okay. We're actually let's try Adam again. All righty.
Sound
All right,
test.
can you hear me now?
Sure.
We're good.
All right, good. All right.
Hey,
Technology.
we're live. We're live, folks. Anything. So please.
Yeah. So one way that people would try to also communicate with spirits is they would take a paper. They would take paper and they would write the from A to Z down in a vertical row or horizontal, and then very slowly taking their finger or their pencil tip go across letter by letter. So let's say they're talking to a spirit whose name is Christopher. Let's say
Mhm.
they would put their finger or pencil tip on the letter A, and there'd be no knock. Then they would move over to B. Again, no knock. Then they move over to C. Now there's a knock. And they would go back from the beginning A, B, C. And then there'd be a knock at H. And then a knock at R until it spelled out the name Christopher. So that's another way that people did early investigating with spirits
Mhm.
back during the paranormal, basically, its youth.
Yeah. I'm kind of, yeah, I've heard of that before. Okay, but then eventually they started using some instruments. Were they called, oh God, help me, Adam, help me. Were they called spectrograms and things like that, where they could take pictures? I know that their motion detectors would be simply tying a string to a door, and if it broke,
Yeah.
that's something coming. I mean, they availed themselves of what they had, but in a way, it was, ingenious thinking. Like, what do I have lying around? And I think that we may laugh at that now, but there's nothing to laugh at because these were the forerunners
Mhm.
way before technology came in. Like, how can I prove this? We talked about powder on the floor.
Yeah.
The
Yeah. No,
string,
there's.
they were tying a bell to a doorknob.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Everything has led to where we are today.
mhm,
As archaic as it was, as like you said, tying a string to a doorknob, it's all led here. And who knows? where this is going to lead in the future. People in 100 years from now may look back and laugh at what we're doing now.
I think we're having a good chuckle at it now,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah, and so I mean, it is kind of a really interesting time. I think honestly I know how to use none of the equipment today, nothing, because like I said, when I investigated, it was simply a digital audio recorder and and a digital camera, and that is it. So,
Yeah, I like.
and a K2 meter that worked when it wanted to, but
Yeah.
yeah, but honestly, like I give props to who are investigating today with the equipment they're using. I would have to be taught how to use that from scratch. I know nothing about how to use it, but I find it interesting. It is. I'm it's exciting times, I guess, to
Well,
see
if we're
what
gonna
in the future.
moving into where we are now, I think that the amount of stuff we use makes us lazy because we don't sit and take things apart. It's more instant gratification. A light came on, a ghost is here. I mean, even at least with recordings, once upon a time, you would have to review them, and it's tedious and it takes hours and hours and hours. But, now we seem to have gotten to the point where we want to invent things that are in the here and now, instant gratification. And I'm not sure that makes us better because sometimes I just think, we're not thinking this through enough. But
Paranormal investigation is a game of patience. A lot of patience.
amen. Amen. And I mean, it comes down to one of my last two questions: how the Victorian paranormal culture has informed and shaped what it is that we've done today. And I think you've done a great job of covering that. We still have some of those techniques we still use to this day. There are still seances and knocks and audible sounds and things like that. But if I can close it off with one last question for you, Adam, and thanks
Sure.
for if we don't have any more questions from chat out there, if you do, now's a great time to put them up there. If you could sit in on one Victorian seance or
Mhm.
investigate one famous Victorian era haunting, which would you choose and why?
Ooh, that's a good question. That's a good question. There's so many that have come in church. It's hard to pick just one. There was one that comes to mind. I think it occurred in the 1870s, early 1870s, or late 1860s, early 1870s. It was this home in Chicago, and the family was being tormented by something in the home. They didn't know what. It would take the children out of bed. It would put them in dangerous positions around the home. It would have them sitting on the edge of a table, putting their head. One of the child's heads was found beneath the stove, the range. Um, the dog, the family dog was taken. His collar was he was like hung on a doorknob by his collar. The dog was fine, by the way.
Mm,
Dog ended up being okay. But there was a picture of there's a famous picture of President Lincoln and his son Tad standing next to him, and apparently this family had that picture hanging on their wall, and the spirit did not like that photo,
mm,
and it kept throwing it off the wall. It would throw it across the room, smashing the frame against the wall. It just did not like that photo of Lincoln and his son Ted. The only, in fact, it destroyed all the pictures. The only picture it didn't destroy was the one of Virgin Mary, I believe it was,
mm.
and that one was left untouched. But I think it would be interesting to have witnessed some of the activity occurring there. I mean, a priest came and the Bible was taken that the priest had. It was ripped out of his hand and thrown across the room.
Mhm.
Um, so, I mean, yeah, it sounds scary. It does. But it would be interesting to see, maybe from a distance,
Yeah.
to see all this activity occurring.
Yeah.
Not necessarily, putting yourself in harm's way, but just kind of observing what's going on with all these
Mhm.
people in this home together, trying to figure out what this thing is that's terrorizing this family. If I
Mhm.
remember correctly, I believe the family just ended up moving.
Ooh. Well, that's extreme and
Yeah, yeah.
severe. Um, to me, I'll tell you what, I've always been a history nerd very much. There's a lot of people when they investigate, and I've done this for a long time and I've never wavered from it. They don't want to know the history of the place because they feel that puts suggestion in your mind. And I understand that. I totally do. Me, I want to know everything. I want to know
Mhm.
who lived there, when they lived. I want the whole story. Because it's a hit or miss proposition. Like yourself, sometimes nothing happens or nothing very significant.
Mhm.
But I always felt that I was better for the experience because I learned something about the property, the town, the area, the region, because so many stories come out of that. Before we let you go, you got a couple of questions here. Joseph Freza, what's one of the most surprising things you learned about the paranormal?
Oh boy.
A lot to unpack, covers a lot of ground.
Yeah, there really is a lot to unpack. I mean, I can take it in different directions. I mean, I could take it in terms of investigating. When I was investigating years ago, how much time it takes to go
Yeah.
through all the material. Wow. I mean, I have no social life to begin with, so it worked for me, but it takes so much time. It takes so much time. Um, but I mean, in terms of spiritualism itself, I think I don't know. That's tough because I want to know everything I can about the history of a location as well, and
Mhm.
about the individuals because that's what I based my investigations on was the history. I
Yeah.
used a lot of history in my questioning
Yeah,
the
something
presence.
must have happened to get us here.
Yeah, yeah,
You know.
and I mean if you don't go in with the history, all you're doing is going in asking, is there anyone here? Make a sound.
Right.
And then where do you go from that? You know, you can ask what's your name, but you know, and how you know, tell me about yourself. But I like to be able to prompt them with some history, things
Right.
that they were involved with personally, things that
Mhm.
make interest, and allow them to communicate a little more, uh, be a little more open about themselves,
Right.
knowing that the person asking questions is interested in their past, in their life.
Yeah. It's just me, but I think that it's advantageous to cut to the chase sometimes because if you're doing an EVP session or, whatever approach you're taking, if I know Tom lived there, then I could come right out of the gate with, "Hi, Tom. My name is Ken. If you're willing to talk to us, we're willing to, rather than, are you a male? Are you a female? Did you did you live in this house? Would you, and you're leading up to it. So I think there's an advantage in that. Paranormal girl who says she's been quietly watching in the background. What is the best session you have ever done? Can I amend that, paranormal girl? You won't be offended. And you can go back to your time as an investigator, Adam, but have you ever had opportunities to observe and sit in on things like seances and table tipping yourself for your own edification?
I actually experienced my first table tipping session last year at the
Okay.
yeah, yeah, it was at the Hoover House. I'm sure Pam and Steve Barry own it.
Oh,
Um,
baby. That's a
I can't
biggie.
think of that. It's you know it's pretty well known place. Um, and Waynesboro, Pennsylvania, that's where it is. And they do table tipping sessions there, and I happened to sit in on one for the first time last year, and it was interesting.
Hmm.
We were asking questions. I was trying to figure out how the table was tipping. You know, I want like kind of some. I just wanted to know how this was happening. I was trying to figure things out, and I don't know. It was interesting. I couldn't figure it out. I just couldn't figure it out. Um, but it would be interesting to sit in on another one. Um, but I love just I don't know. I love the excitement surrounding it, and at
Mm.
the same time, I want to know how it works. I want answers.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah.
I have sat in on one seance and one table. I mean, as a participant, and it was really non. nothing dramatic happened or anything like that. But I just thought, yeah, I got to do this at least once in my life. Now, before we get to and let you out of here and talk a little bit about your books and what's coming up next for you, we'll try to get through this quickly. But somebody out there is going to say, how come they didn't talk about Ouija boards? So let's just talk about Ouija boards for a quick 5 minutes here, because again, you're talking about the evolution of knocking, rapping, and then in the 1800s, the talking board happened. And I think there's something about New York. There must have been something about New York out there, the
Hmm.
spiritualist camps that they were. But the Ouija board, Adam, and I'm going to give you the floor. Again, we'll do one of these from there to hear things and what has happened to the Ouija board as the century has progressed.
Yeah, it started very basic. It was just a simple piece of paper or a piece of wood. It looked somewhat similar to the way boards do today, just not all of them had the goodbye at the bottom of it.
Right.
And there wasn't the early ones didn't really have a planchet. Some of them did, some of them didn't though. Um, and I don't know how they were used without a planchet. But yeah, it really hasn't changed a whole lot. Ouija boards, I want to say, I think I saw the first time I saw one mentioned in my research was probably the 1880s. And I remember seeing a diagram for
Yeah.
it also,
Yeah.
and it looks very similar to today's. Um, and it worked in the same way that, the I think oh, you know what it was? You know what it was? The one without a planchet, it worked the same way that the alphabet on a paper worked. So you would just take your finger or some um,
Okay.
thin item like a
Yeah.
pencil or whatever, and run it across the letters one by one until you heard a knocking sound.
Right.
Then when the planchet came about a little bit later, then people started, of course, using the planchet as they do today. But the Ouija board really hasn't changed a whole lot, and the way it's been used really hasn't changed a whole lot through
Mm.
time.
Well, it was an innocent parlor game that couples would play because they got to touch knees underneath it back at a time where that was considered salacious. You know what I mean? Because it's supposed to be placed in the laps. And then suddenly 1973 and The Exorcist happened. And it was like, my God, the Ouija board just got a bad name after that,
Mm.
opening to worlds and things like that. Adam, we're coming to the end here. I want to give you an opportunity to tell you a little about. We've been running your website underneath if you want more information about Adam, the Victorian Historian.com. But I know you're an author and you give these presentations, and they're wonderful. That's where I met you in New Jersey 2 years ago. I was in the next room and introduced, but you had a lot of people in there, so I didn't want to monopolize your time. I'm glad we had tonight. But tell us a little bit about what's up with Adam, what's coming.
Yeah. Yeah, so I have been working on a series of books titled History's Haunted Headlines. There's 4 volumes out right now. And they are basically personal accounts that people have had that they told to reporters of newspapers throughout the country, and these newspapers were published throughout the country, and so these are ghost stories or personal accounts that have been lost to time. These accounts appeared in publications which were read every morning or evening if it was an evening edition, and then the papers were thrown out. They were thrown away. So all those stories have been lost to time, and I'm trying to dig those stories back up and reintroduce them to a new generation because these are all new accounts for anyone alive today. All the books are available on Amazon. You can just type in my name and the books will come up. You can type in History's Haunted Headlines or go to my website, thevictorianhistorian.com, or just victorianhistorian.com. And the links to the individual books on Amazon are there. I write more than just paranormal books. Anything that has to do with the weird, the strange, the obscure side of America's 19th and early 20th century. I'm currently working on a book on how Americans celebrated Halloween in the 19th century and the customs and and the way they threw parties, and not just that, but also the crimes and the murders, Halloween related murders, which occurred as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the specialty food items that they had. I'm trying to cover everything about Halloween in the America's 19th century. And then I made to History's Haunted Headlines Volume 5, which would cover the very beginning of the 20th century. And yeah, and so I'm enjoying that. I do hope to get another table tipping session in at some point.
I hope so, for your sake.
Yeah, I really enjoy that. Yeah, I'm still trying to figure it out how that table moved. I can't figure it out, but I do want to partake in another one. That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Next time I'm at the Hoover House.
It's
But
funny you mention that because, as a little side project, just for my own edification, I've been going through the internet and taking newspaper stories of real ghost, reports that have been written up. So the idea, not, I mean, that's just for me out of curiosity. I'm so glad if you're putting together a compilation of those things, especially the way they're written up, people are just going to absolutely adore it.
yeah, I mean,
They really are.
uh, pardon the notes. I have notes in them, but I mean, I got um, there's two
History's
volumes
on it
here.
headlines. Woo!
Volumes 1 and 4, and then volumes 2 and 3. Again, sorry for the notes,
Oh my.
but yeah, I got notes all over the place here.
I'm going to
Uh,
stop. I'm just going to buy those books, Adam. I'm going to save myself a lot of trouble here. They can get them, Adam. They can get them on victorianhistorian.com.
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, victorianhistorian.com. Also, just and each book has an individual link directly to the Amazon listing on there.
Okay, very good. That's excellent. Good to know. Buy the books, ladies and gentlemen. This is fascinating stuff. Adam, we're going to say good night for now. I want the audience to hang in there because as we let Adam go, there is one more announcement I would like to make, George. But Adam, on behalf just of myself, it has been a real pleasure to talk
Oh,
to
it's
you
been my
about
pleasure.
this. And please don't be a stranger. Please come back sometime.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much, and thank you for having me on here, and thank you everyone for tuning in and watching. And I hope you enjoyed it.
Absolutely.
Yes, thank you so much. Take care of
Thank you.
yourself and enjoy this new year.
You as well. Thank you.
Bye
Good
Okay.
bye.
night, everyone.
Thank you much. Okay. Oh,
That was weird.
oh,
Are you doing it?
I'm not doing it.
I'm not doing
As
it.
far as you know.
It's
Hey,
just
listen,
weird.
folks. Before we let you get out of here, we did want to make mention again of this event that we're putting on at the Alley Theater on January 17th, Middleborough, Massachusetts, 3 to 6 p.m. This is to help out our friend who's given so much to all of us and has poured her heart and love out to a lot of us. And it's a good time to do the same, to reciprocate. And I know that your prayers are welcome, your love and light, and your good thoughts are as well. But we want to do something tangible for her. All proceeds of this will go to Andrea. She sees fit for her medical bills. Things are piling up. We know that cancer has touched all of us in one way or the other. Maureen Hancock, a very well renowned medium here in New England, will be doing an hour gallery reading, followed by our friend Tom Stewart and Scott Higgins. We're going to do a little stand up comedy. So, again, January 17th. The tickets are about half gone right now. I know we put this right on the heels of the holiday, but if you want to attend, that's fine. If you want to sponsor, if you go to the links on the Rise Up Paranormal Facebook page, it'll show you how to buy tickets, how to have a sponsorship, and how to just donate, whether it's $1, $5, $2, or whatever, if you're halfway across the country, can't make it. So please, if you're in the vicinity of my voice, feel free to join us. There's going to be a great raffle, by the way. there's going to be a great raffle. So help us help her, and she is grateful beyond measure. Her words, for everything we're doing. Joseph bought your tickets last week. Attaboy. So, George, that's about it. It was great having Adam in here.
Yes.
Topic I hoped everybody enjoyed. I know I did, because I always love learning how we got to the point that we are now. I know a lot of people look at the 1800s and they say, well, what did they know? That's kind of myopic. We don't give them credit for the technological advances, whether it's medicine, or I know we're talking about the paranormal here, but gives you an idea that sometimes things really haven't changed. They just look different, but they're the same.
Yeah, it's putting lipstick on a different pig.
That's all. And shout out to Dan Marie for, brokering this deal and finally, getting me in touch with Adam. Thank you, Dan. Tomorrow night, Town Hall, eh?
Yeah, Town Hall tomorrow night is on, ladies and gentlemen, and I'll explain my unusual absence for most of the show tonight tomorrow. But Ken, we're ready to go at this point in time. If you want to close this out, I thank you guys again for joining us this evening, as always. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. If you are already a subscriber, just hit the thumbs up. Each show, it's important to hit the thumbs up. It doesn't mean for the channel, it means for this episode. And for those of you also that are just initially subscribing, hit that reminder bell for notifications of upcoming posts. So, on behalf of Ken DaCosta, my name's George Lopez. Thank you guys for joining us again. We'll see you next week. Until then, take care of yourselves. Enjoy this new year.
I see her rolling up, Uber black Cadillac, high heel boots and a sexy body full of tats. Baby's bad, oh baby's hella bad. After her there ain't no coming back. Wanna take a run at that. I think she's feeling me, turn it up a few